huge focus to shift consumers from website to app, for the simple reason that when you are shopping on a desktop, on a website, the whole comparison behavior, you can open multiple windows and the whole comparison behavior is there. But if you're on an app, you rest there on the screen of the mobile phone, and B, that whole comparison thing doesn't come in. So there is a business reason why you want people to switch to an app and to keep coming back. And
hey guys, good evening all. This is Mohit here, your host on Enriching Talks, and today we have one of the guests with us, Aditi. Aditi doesn't need a lot of introduction. Comes with a lot of strong experiences, background about around marketing, right? So pleasure to have you, Aditi. Right, lovely interacting with you. I'm very sure that next 20-25 minutes will be actually enriching for the growth community, right?
Thank you so much for having me over. Looking forward to this discussion.
Excellent. So, Aditi, before we get started, right? So just probably, as I ask for, most of our guests, right? A little bit of a background about your journey, how you have traveled, and what exactly, currently, you are getting engaged with.
Okay, sure. So I think I should start with the current one, and then maybe then take you back to where I started, etc. So now I've been working it's my 16th year running in marketing. And my current role is as a consumer and creative strategy head for Coca-Cola, the brand Coca-Cola, not the organization. And that really, involves how do you translate the brand strategy into a consumer strategy? How do you create communication, creative assets, platforms, ideas, build community, which, basically consumers want to interact with the brand. So that's my current remit. I started out, as I mentioned, 16 years back, I started out with Airtel. And at that point in time, digital marketing was very, very niche still. And it was largely an advertising-driven marketing world that I inherited and I kind of walked into. So it started with traditional consumer insights, and it moved to shopper marketing. Then I moved to brand strategy, advertising-led roles. And it's been pretty much that. I changed sectors and industries as I was moving. So then I moved to e-commerce and I was with Flipkart. And there it was a lot more digital because the brand is digital. And a lot of things in terms of consumer engagement, increasing stickiness on the platform. How do you get consumers to keep coming back? A lot of those things and those ideas were actually being piloted at that point in time for various categories. So it was that. And then 6 years were in the consumer durable space. So I was with mobile phones, first with Micromax, then with Nokia. And again, it was a marketing role there, which involved consumer strategy, media, digital marketing, research, a whole gamut of things that were involved.
Yeah, I think a huge breadth of experiences around our multiple sectors. So, let's probably, start one of the point which actually you touched upon, the customer engagement sort of stuff, right? So you would have seen the journey across various verticals around that, how the same customer is traveling, right? So, and for last 2 years, we have seen that the scenarios around customer engagement is also changing the way, brands are actually trying to, communicate to the customers to, create more stickiness, right? So where do you see, what was happening 2 years back, what used to work 2 years back? Today, it may not work. Tomorrow, I'm pretty sure, we need something else, right? So what's your thought around this, Aditi?
So see, Mohit, because I have seen across different industries, I can tell you consumer engagement means very different things in different industries. So for example, in an organization like Coke, we don't have our own assets. We have a website, but that's more a digital presence website rather than a transacting or a content website. We don't have an app. We sell largely through the offline channel. So for us, consumer engagement means different. It means how connected consumers are with us on our social handles, how much are they coming back, how much they are engaging, how much they are participating, etc., etc. So it's probably the left spectrum and how everybody else started looking at consumer engagement. But as you kind of move to more digitally focused categories, for example, whether it's a mobile phone or it's the classic example would be a Flipkart, where you want consumers to keep coming back. I think their consumer engagement is a whole new thing because that is very deep. You want consumers to keep coming back to your own asset, whether it's an app or it's a website. You want to give them a rich consumer experience in terms of content. You want to engage them in increase the time that they spend on the platform and give them more and more reasons to keep coming back. So there it's different because it's very critical to how you build and drive business. as well as how much revenue you generate from the same consumer. So it's very different and very evolved in these industries versus, let's say, in an FMCG industry, which doesn't really do much of a business through own IPs and platforms.
Great, right? So if I have to take an example, say Flipkart itself, right? And Flipkart is a trendsetter. A lot of people try to copy what's the strategy and all those things, right? So an extended question would be that now what Flipkart used to do, say 2 years back to keep the consumer hooked, right? So I don't think only the discounting model will used to work, right? So now what do you think that players like Flipkart, what additional stuff they are trying to do, right, to keep this customers coming back to their platform?
Yeah, I think there is a general understanding that there is only that much that you can shop. And again, if you are an e-commerce portal, I mean, you are the entry point to multiple brands, but what do you stand for, and why should, if you don't build a sustainable advantage of differentiated consumer experience, then it will always be, like you mentioned, deals and discounts versus width of selection, which anybody will choose an Amazon versus a Flipkart. So all these players are looking at ways in which, the consumer stickiness can go up, people can keep coming back. I remember in 2014, there were a couple of categories that I launched and scaled up. And at that point in time, the larger problem statement was, how do we get women consumers to become online shoppers? And I was taking care of two categories, fashion and lifestyle, and home and decor, which is, again, both the categories were centered around women. And at that point in time, we were saying that one part of it is, of course, the whole thing about coming and shopping. But what else can be built which will get consumers back again? So we were trying things like lookbooks, and we were trying things like, this is, let's say, Anushka Sharma's style guide. And, you put together a look, a feel, accessories, etc. So you give them like a visual catalog, ideas to style themselves, ideas to what's trending, what's not trending, what kind of prints, what kind of designs, what is in, what is out, those kind of things to kind of get them in. And those were very early days of consumer engagement and, getting people back. The other thing that we had piloted along with Big Billion Day, because 2014 was also the year when Big Billion Day was first launched. Another thing that we had launched, which we had tried, and there was a huge focus to shift consumers from website to app, for the simple reason that when you are shopping on a desktop, on a website, the whole comparison behavior, you can open multiple windows and the whole comparison behavior is there. But if you're in an app, you rest there on the screen of the mobile phone, and B, that whole comparison thing doesn't come in. So there is a business reason why you want people to switch to an app and to keep coming back. And at that point in time, things that we were trying were, how can you build more games? How can you build more engagement activities? How can you do more of push notifications that will keep reminding people, etc. And it's completely evolved in these last 7 years, I would say. Now, today, Flipkart has a video section where they are giving good, rich content, which is both own production as well as third-party content. There are games that they have launched. Again, these are all ways of getting consumers back. If you look at Amazon, no different. So while they have Prime, which is a completely paid service, you have also launched something called an Amazon Mini TV, which is an advertising-based content platform. And again, it has nothing to do with transactions or their core business, if I was to call it e-commerce, but it's only to get more and more consumers back onto the platform, to see original content, to sample more content, and spend more time with the consumers. So, I mean, it's evolving. Even Netflix is now launching games, etc. You can download, play games. Swiggy, Zomato, they have all these slot machines and different various kinds of games. So everybody is trying to give consumers a reason which is beyond transaction. And the best way to do it is through various forms of content, whether it's gaming, whether it is style guides, whether it is video content. So that's where everybody is, because that's where business happens. So you need to get consumer back. So engagement for new age players is very, very tightly tied to business and brand, which is why we see a lot of evolution which has happened.
Very nice, very nicely portrayed here. So I used to always wonder, before we actually, started a flash around this. Initially, I think Flipkart was the first guy who actually added games and all those things. And later, I think, now if you see Myntra, right? So Myntra has a full-blown Myntra studio where they do this light shopping and a lot of these social angle of it, right? So I used to wonder, many people still wonder today that, why will a non-transactional stuff, right, should be present on a transactional where, a customer comes with an intention to buy, right? So many of my customers also ask me that, why will somebody will go and, watch a live stream, right? So what do you think, like, where is the disconnect here, right? So why, the
So there is
clarity, what you have, right? What is the thing which is missing?
two things here, and very interesting topic that you started. So one is live streaming, and you mentioned Myntra Studio. Amazon has also started a similar program with influencers, and the whole approach there, what we are following, and India is following China more when it comes to consumer technology adoption and trends versus the West, because we have also grown in internet penetration at the back of mobile phones versus the whole desktop and web 1.0 era. And if you look at Alibaba, which is the big player within China, they have tasted a lot of success with live streaming and social commerce through influencers. And it's exactly the same model that has been just lifted and shifted here. Absolutely. Now the advantage, and I've seen many of these live streams of influencers, because when it first started, I think 2 or 3 years back is when Myntra started it, and now they've scaled it up to a very, they've like, it's become like a regular feature. You have influencers who are, and they're doing it for fashion category, and they're doing it for beauty category. And imagine versus a salesperson selling you a product in an offline store, you have an influencer who has high credibility, is an authority on fashion or beauty, who's trying out different things, answering queries live, and also giving you a promo code to kind of buy. So that just closes the friction between, I like this, but how will it look? Is the shade right? Is the fit right? Will it look good? Will it not look good? What's the fabric? Whatever are the barriers to purchasing a high involvement touch and feel category like fashion and beauty? They're just trying to dissolve those barriers and bring people closer to commerce. So that is one thing which is happening, it's a complete business rationale why this is happening. The second bit is all of these players, whether it's Amazon, Myntra, Flipkart, they are also big publishers with huge consumers, and therefore they have started their own advertising options. And it works typically like how it works for a Facebook or for a Google. The more consumers you have, the more brands are willing to put in their ads. So they are finding ways in which they can get more and more consumers back onto the platform, because then they can sell that as advertising solutions. And they have started selling advertising solutions to other brands who want to reach their consumers. So just like, let's say, as Coca-Cola, I today invest money behind ads on YouTube, on Facebook, I would also want to invest behind ads because I'm chasing the consumer. And if the consumer is watching Case To Banta Hai on Amazon Mini TV, then it's a perfect case for me to go and then advertise there as well. So it's another revenue stream that they're opening via content.
Correct. Right. So now if you take an example of, say, the D2C industry today, right, and where it has been exponentially growing and it will continue to grow at least for next 5 to 8 years, till probably we reach some kind of a saturation that abhi kuch brand bacha hi nahi hai, right? So now they don't have, like, as we mentioned, like so many options, Flipkart ki tarah, that, okay, now this is what they can create, right? So they have, so most of my D2C, folks, customers, their whole and sole motive is that have a good product, right? Have a, a good supply line and all those things. And that is where they are more focused in, right? So what do you think that, how do a D2C player or someone who's in the growth stage, right? How do they even compete or probably come into the same kind of a zone? Because the same Gen Z customer is actually comparing, the experience at Myntra and then the same experience at any of the good D2C brands, right? So how do we actually bridge this gap?
I think one brand which has done it really well is Sugar Cosmetics, because they have their own D2C platform, a website, an app, and then they also sell through all these marketplaces like Nykaa and Myntra and all of that. But if you just go and see the kind of richness of content that happens on their own website versus what happens on a Myntra and other marketplaces, it is superior, and there is a differentiated experience that they are giving. I understand if it's like all of these things are a function of scale at the end of it, because content creation, influencer marketing, building the capabilities, these are not tactical activities. These are very strategic activities. They involve a lot of money. So there has to be a business case at the end of it. And I think the D2C player needs to evaluate whether it makes more sense for them to have everything on their platform, because then it's just not content creation, but it's also awareness. So you need to put in a lot of paid media money and you need to get consumers, versus a marketplace which already has a lot of consumers And what's the trade-off? Because there is obviously a cost involved in like a financial cost of being part of a marketplace. Plus, it's always compromised visibility because they are putting across thousands of brands. It's not you alone. So I think that's the trade-off that the D2C brand needs to see, where it makes more sense to do, and then invest in a content strategy.
Correct. And mostly, I think that has actually given a burst to startup like us, which is focused on mostly enabling these D2C folks to have the very similar experience as a plug and play, right? So hopefully, it actually gives us a little bit more confidence that hey, there is a problem statement and you are actually walking on the right path, right? So a quick second question around say retention, right? So all these things we are talking about is actually about consumer retention, like to create the stickiness. And whenever I've seen speaking to the growth folks, right? So this whole customer retention probably is not a very glamorous topic for them, right? So it actually goes back a little bit backseat, and they want to focus on, no, I have this much of budget and where I need to focus on, getting more on the funnel, right? And rather than, okay, no, chalta hai, we'll see this thing that, right? We'll do this thing later. So what is your thought around this, Aditi?
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's really sad because customer acquisition comes at a cost, but a lot of the players are not looking at a customer lifetime value. When you look and evaluate a customer lifetime value, then you would be forced to thinking of interventions that you will do which will retain the consumer, because CAC is a very tactical metric. Like I pay X, like today my CAC is, let's say, $10, tomorrow I want it to be 8, 7, and but then whether it's a leaky funnel, whether that consumer is ever coming back, how are we giving them reasons to come back, etc. So if the brands are to focus on a customer lifetime value and therefore plan their budgets partly for acquisition, but also for giving value through the lifetime, through various retention, service, value, features, content initiatives, I think it will make more sense. And I'll tell you, for my longest time, I was with Airtel, and Airtel, it's all about customer lifetime value, because in those days, there was a cost for acquiring a customer. A prepaid connection costed something, a postpaid connection also costed something. It was not free. But that we were always having a view of the consumer in terms of a lifetime and saying that if this is a cost at which we acquire the customer, how do we then, through various interventions, move the customer, upgrade the customer, cross-sell more services, more products, and always looking at a customer lifetime value. I think that's what is kind of missing. It's become very tactical in saying we'll get this much traffic, this is the cost per sale or acquisition, etc. And people are not thinking about retention, which is where the unit economics, etc., everything is going for a toss.
Correct. So any hacks which you want to share it with our D2C friends in terms of, because I believe that next 5 years people will be able to build a sustainable business, right, where their balance between the CAC and the LTV, right, has to be maintained for them to survive, because there are so many brands, right? Every day we are having a brand, and surprisingly everyone has very good products. Not good, like there are the consumer, as an Indian consumer, I feel that I have the maximum option today for us to even think of something and start shopping, right? So I think the differentiation would be this, that how do I retain my customers on what experience I'm able to give, right? So what could be some playbooks around here, Aditi, right, if they have to follow very simple terms?
I think it's most importantly, rather than a playbook, it's a mindset issue. If we continue to assign budgets for acquisition, and if the KPIs that the marketing team or the growth marketing team holds is of customer acquisition and cost per customer acquisition, then that's what they hold, and they will never think of retention. I mean, there has to be people whose KRA have to be about how to get maximum value out of the consumer, and that is not going to happen if you don't give differentiated experience, better service, better offers, better content, whatever is that whole thing. So there need to be teams which need to be focused on that. And again, going back, because Airtel is the place where I've seen that happening, there used to be teams who were acquisition teams, and then there were huge teams who were who we called usage and retention teams, UNR teams. And their whole KPI was looking at a lot of data, and now there are fancy terms like big data and all of that, ML, AI, all of those terms have come in. But back in 2007, Airtel was doing it. And they had like 200 million consumers at that point in time, paying customers who were on the network. So how do you look at that customer data? How do you really then channelize and create various segments? How do you figure out what are the relevant offers for every segment? And how do you then personalize those offerings and keep talking to them in a more meaningful, sustained manner so that you are able to not only retain them, but actually upgrade them from the lowest paying customer who has probably an ARPU of 50 rupees today, average revenue per user, to then having 65, 70, and maybe keep moving and nurturing that customer. So
great. Maybe one final question around. So now, I think you are probably, interacting with, peers, probably domestic, probably connected to the world economy also here. So if you have to list down saying that now these are the top 3 things where the brands are trying to innovate around, these, customer engagement / retention, right? So, so we talked about an example in China, which is on the live streaming part. What do you think that, what are the other things which is probably, you are finding it very interesting, which, we could see that, next 6 months to 1 year that things may change. Any thoughts around that, Aditi?
I think influencer marketing is something that everybody is trying to take a dig at, but unfortunately, 95% of brands out there are doing influencer marketing in a very tactical, forgettable way. So you don't get any strategic win. So you have a baseline, you do an influencer marketing campaign, you get a buzz, and then you are back to your baseline. So it's a tactical thing because you've not managed to move your organic baseline after doing an influencer activation. So that is interesting because influencers are really, it's a creator's economy and influencers are commanding huge monies. But I don't think most brands are getting anything more than a tactical buzz and engagement, awareness, whatever be the KPIs, but it's like a blip and then it kind of goes down. So how do you use influencers a little more strategically, which are either tied to your brand or your business objectives? So I think that will be one good field, and I think it will mature and it will kind of evolve. So that is one thing that I am very keen about. The other thing, which is the new shiny toy that all marketeers are now, at least the big ones are now toying with, is the whole metaverse. And how can we give, again, very personalized brand experiences in the metaverse? So interesting things happening. They're still very niche. I don't think it's going to become mainstream in 1 year from now, but definitely in 5 years from now. That's, again, you need to build capability now for it to become mainstream in 5 years. So again, that is something that brands are looking at. And I think the third thing is that the era of advertising is long over. Nobody likes seeing ads. So again, how do you have this meaningful consumer engagements, whether it's on your platform or off your platform? How do you do this whole community building act with your key consumers, pull in new consumers? I think very few brands have, again, cracked that. And that's, again, something that a lot of brands are now thinking about how to do. So I think those are 2 or 3 things that the industry is focused on.
Very excellent thoughts. It gave me some food for thought as well, right? That, how to tickle my mind. But, greatly thankful, Aditi, for your time, right? It was a very, very enriching discussion, right? And I'm very sure the community also would gain something out of it, right? So thank you once again, Aditi, right? It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Same here.